Ever thought about why we say heads up when you should actually duck? Today, we're diving headfirst into the peculiarities and origins of common phrases and actions that we take for granted every day. You'd be surprised to realize how many of these sayings don't quite add up when we take a closer look. Unraveling them can be an adventure akin to Alice's trip down the rabbit hole, full of unexpected twists and turns. Let's start with break a leg. Yes, it's a popular saying in the theater world, but why would we wish someone physical harm right before they're about to perform? Well, it turns out that it's actually a way to wish someone good luck without jinxing them. It's a bit like reverse psychology for the universe, and then there's bite the bullet. Now, unless you're a character in a Wild West movie, you're probably not in the habit of chewing on ammunition. In fact, this phrase originated in the days before anesthesia, when soldiers would literally bite on a bullet during surgery to help them endure the pain. Ever wondered why we put our foot in our mouth? It's a phrase used when we say something embarrassing or inappropriate. But if you've ever tried to physically put your foot in your mouth, you'll know it's quite a feat. The phrase actually comes from the idea of tripping over our own words, much like one might trip over their own feet. And what about letting the cat out of the bag? This phrase has nothing to do with felines or bags, but instead comes from an old market scam where a seller would put a cat in a bag instead of a pig. If you let the cat out of the bag, you expose the scam. So you see, our everyday language is filled with these peculiar phrases that make our conversations richer and more colorful. They're little pieces of history wrapped in a riddle, a testament to our creativity and humor as human beings. So next time someone says heads up, you might want to ask them if they're sure about that. Did you know the early bird gets the worm was actually a warning from worms? That's right. They were just trying to get some sleep, and here comes early bird, always up at the crack of dawn, disturbing their wormy dreams. Now let's talk about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This one was actually coined by a cockroach. You know, the ones who've survived every mass extinction event and can live without their heads for weeks. What they're really saying is, hey, if a nuclear blast can't take us out, nothing will. Moving on to actions speak louder than words. This was first said by a mime who was tired of being misunderstood. He figured if he just exaggerated his actions a little more, maybe people would finally get the hint and stop asking him to speak. And then there's every cloud has a silver lining. Legend has it that this was first uttered by a very optimistic meteorologist who was trying to convince people that even though it was raining cats and dogs, at least they could look forward to some shiny clouds. Ever heard of an apple a day keeps the doctor away? Well, this was actually the result of a clever marketing campaign by apple farmers. They figured if they could convince people that eating their fruit would ward off doctors, they'd sell more apples. And boy, did it work. And lastly, don't count your chickens before they hatch. This was first said by a very nervous chicken named Clucky, who was always worried about her eggs. She'd count them every day and worry if there was one less than before. So she came up with this phrase to stop herself from stressing out. So remember, if you're an early bird, make sure you're not in a worm's nightmare. And if you ever find yourself counting chickens, just remember Clucky and try not to stress. After all, every quote has a hilarious story behind it if you just know where to look. History is no laughing matter, or is it? Let's take a trip back in time, shall we? Picture this. It's the Middle Ages, and knights are the celebrities of the era. Now imagine a knight all armored up, ready for battle. He's got his sword, his shield, and his coconut shells. Yeah, you heard that right. In medieval times, knights would often use hollowed-out coconut shells to mimic the sound of a horse's galloping. You've got to admit that's a pretty creative solution for a budget travel arrangement. Then there was the time when the ancient Romans decided to tax urine. Apparently, urine was a valuable commodity used in tanning and laundering. So the next time you think your taxes are ridiculous, just remember that you could be paying a pee tax. And let's not forget about the time when the city of Turin, back in the 18th century, was so fed up with the local fly population that they actually put the insects on trial. The flies were found guilty, of course, and were sentenced to exile. I guess it's comforting to know that even in history, everyone had their own version of a bad day. Now, fast forward to the American Civil War. General Stonewall Jackson was so afraid of imbalance that he often raised his hand while riding his horse to ensure equal blood flow. Imagine seeing a military general in the middle of a war, riding around with one hand in the air. I bet his soldiers were as confused as we are. And finally, we have the tale of Emperor Caligula, who in a fit of rage declared war on the sea. Yes, the sea. He had his soldiers stab the water and even ordered them to collect seashells as spoils of war. Talk about a beach day gone wrong. And that, folks, is why you should always double-check your horse's GPS before heading into battle. Ever wondered why your cat looks at you like you just told the worst joke in the world? Well, welcome to the amusing reality of living with pets. It's a world where you're not the boss, but the servant, and your main job is to keep your furry overlords happy. Let's start with dogs. Ever noticed how they seem to have a sixth sense for when you're about to eat? You could be sneaking a midnight snack in the dark, and suddenly you'll feel a cold nose nudging your hand. It's like they have some sort of built-in food radar, and don't even get me started on their selective hearing. Call them to come inside, and they'll ignore you. Open a bag of chips, and they'll come running like they're in the Olympics. Then we have cats. Oh, the enigmatic felines. They'll ignore the expensive cat bed you bought and instead choose to sleep in the cardboard box it came in. Or they'll spend hours staring at a blank wall, and just when you start to worry about their mental health, they'll suddenly pounce on an invisible enemy. They're the masters of unpredictability. Birds too have their quirks. Parrots that mimic your phone ringing just when you've settled down for a nap. Finches that seem to hold their loudest concerts at the break of dawn. And let's not forget the hamsters, who find the most pleasure in running on their squeaky wheels at 3 in the morning. And us? We humans try our best to understand them, to decode their mysterious ways. We buy them toys, we feed them gourmet meals, we even talk to them in silly voices. But at the end of the day, we're just their humble servants, living in a world that's ruled by their adorable whims. So if your dog is giving you the side eye, maybe it's because he's just not that into your Netflix choices. Or perhaps he's just plotting his next move in the never-ending game of who's the boss. In the amusing reality of living with pets, it's always them, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Before we wrap up, ever wondered why we say break a leg to wish someone good luck? It's quite the paradox, isn't it? Imagine you're all pumped up for your big performance, and here comes your mate wishing you a broken leg. Talk about a mood breaker. Well, it's said to have originated from the world of theater, where superstitious actors believed that wishing someone good luck would actually bring them bad luck. So instead, they wish for the opposite. It's a funny world, right? And it doesn't end there. Ever noticed how we say heads up when we actually want someone to duck or avoid something falling? You'd think we'd say heads down, but nope. We humans love to keep things interesting. And then there's catching some Z's. Now, where in the world did that come from? Do we suddenly become alphabet hunters in our sleep? Well, it's actually from the comic strips where cartoonists used the letter Z to represent someone sleeping. And voila, we're all out there trying to catch some Z's. And how about close but no cigar? Imagine being in a situation where you just missed out on something big, and someone tells you close but no cigar. You'd probably be left wondering, when did cigars become the benchmark for success? As it turns out, cigars were once popular prizes at carnivals for games of skill. So, if you were close to winning but didn't, you were close but no cigar. Isn't it amusing how we use these phrases in our daily lives without really knowing where they come from? It's like we're all a part of this grand comedy, playing our parts one idiom at a time. And remember, if you ever need to break a leg, make sure it's just a phrase and not an action. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more laughs.